Did you know that the top 5% of poker players make 90% of the money? Okay, if I'm being honest, that's not a real stat. They don't track these kind of things very well. I really think that's roughly what it would be if I had to guess. I would love to provide you with interesting stats like that, but nobody's doing the studies. Anyways, I'm Phil Galfond. I have been playing professional poker for half my life. I've been playing against the best in the world for over a decade and a half, which is relevant because today my producer, Thomas, asked me about the top 5 qualities that elite poker players have. So if you're interested in learning what makes the best and interested in finding out if you have some of those traits, here we go.
All right, Phil, this is top 5 common traits of winning poker players.
Okay. I like that one. There are actually 2 different ways to take this question, and the way that I'm personally more interested in is top 5 traits of the most successful poker players. We could maybe do a different one another day of traits of winning poker players that are winning at a modest amount. But I'm interested in talking about the elite and what I've noticed because I've played against a lot of elite players and I'm friends with a lot of elite players. I've got more unique insight into that than most people. Top 5 traits of elite poker players. Every elite poker player that I know is really strong with logical reasoning, deductive logic. A really common question is, what areas of intelligence are most important? Is it math? To me, far and away, the answer is logic. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, I took logic in college, but you don't have to have taken a class in it. There are a few different ways to, so one is, hand reading is essentially deductive logic. It's, okay, so my opponent's played it this way. This is the range of hands that my opponent has, but here's what I know about my opponent. This kind of eliminates these or makes these less likely. I also know that on this next street, we can remove those, and so on and so forth. And then the more important way and the trickier way is, okay, so I know these things about my opponent, either in this individual hand, or also I've looked at stats on my opponent, and I know my opponent's not delay c-betting the turn often enough. Then you have to use logic to figure out the correct counter strategy because it's not always intuitive. A lot of counter strategies don't involve attacking that leak or that weakness right away, but attacking it on future streets or planning for it ahead of time. So far and away, I think the area of intelligence that's most important is logic. Next one is a huge competitive drive. I can't think of any elite poker players who are not fiercely competitive, at the very least with themselves, but often with other people as well. You'll find a lot of poker pros were college athletes, some professional athletes, and if not college or professional, just very athletic, even in high school. Doyle Brunson was a basketball player. Gus Hansen did a few things. Patrick Antonius was a tennis player. I think David Benjamin was a tennis player. Is that right? A lot of people from my generation, Jason Kuhn was a college sprinter. There are a lot that I'm going to forget about, but tons of athletes. And it's not that their athletic talent has anything to do with their poker abilities. It's that competitive drive, that doing what it takes because you have that strong drive to win and to be the best is massively important if you're going to be elite. Next is self-awareness. There are a few elite pros without much self-awareness, but they do get themselves in trouble a lot. Most elite pros are self-aware enough to know when they're in a game that is definitely not good for them. They have enough humility to admit that. They're self-aware enough to know when they're in a good state of mind, and when they're not in a good state of mind, what are the types of thoughts that are going through their head, which lets them get to the root of the issue. Similarly, you just know your weaknesses. People who are not willing to admit their weaknesses aren't going to get to improve upon them. And so when you combine self-awareness, and I guess humility a little bit, with that fierce competitive drive, you get somebody who is aware of a lot of their weaknesses and works really, really hard to improve upon them. Next is passion for the game. Every elite poker player I know, at least at some point, absolutely was obsessed with poker, loved poker, was not just in it to make money, just fascinated with the game. And I think that's what it takes to get really, really good, because otherwise it's just a little too boring and it's a little too hard emotionally if you don't have that love of the game itself. I don't believe love of the game can be learned or worked on. I think you either love it or you don't. if you're here, I think there's a good chance you probably love poker. So that's a good first step. If you do love poker, by the way, subscribe, because I make a lot of videos about poker. Yeah, loving poker is a prerequisite for becoming elite. All right, so I'm struggling with a fifth, so I'm gonna kind of cheat and do 3 smaller ones, which I think are not as important as the other 4 things that I've listed. Intelligences in math and psychology, not necessarily, clinical psychology. You don't have to have studied psychology, but an interest in understanding and how people think. Lastly, empathy, which is similar to psychology, but I think being able to empathize with other players helps you get inside their head more than just a general idea of how people think. Most elite players have some combination of these. For what it's worth, the math in poker is not very complicated. You just need to, high school level math is as far as you need to go, but you need to be pretty good at high school level math. You need to have an aptitude, I think, for math. And that's true almost without exception. There are a few excellent players who I've encountered who are not great at math. So if you're not, it doesn't mean it's the end of the road for you. And certainly a lot of good players who are not great at math. But most of the elite players I can think of have a good math aptitude. You don't need to have taken, college level calculus or beyond that. But it helps if numbers come easily to you. I'll put it that way. Psychology and empathy, I guess I've already talked about, but it's essentially, so much of poker is understanding yourself, which is in self-awareness, and understanding your opponents, empathizing with your opponents, thinking about the desires they might have and how that affects their play, the fears they might have and how that affects their play, thinking about what type of thought process might lead them to play the way you've observed them playing. Because if you can take a good guess at that, you can then extrapolate to other situations, and with what you know about them based on the way they've played a few hands, what your guess is. I mean, based on the way they play a lot of hands, if we're going to say no about them, you can take some better guesses at the way they would play different hands, and especially things that they would not do. Another thing that didn't make the top 5, because I think it's captured in some of the other traits, is how you deal with adversity. Elite players deal with adversity and downswings very well, and it's super important because downswings happen all the time. So if you're interested in hearing more about that and how I deal with downswings, I have a video that I worked very hard on that, which should show up around here. I hope you enjoyed this video as well, and I hope it taught you something and piqued your interest in poker, maybe more than it already was. I will see you in the next one. Take care.